call the meeting to order. Rita, can you do the roll call, please?
Sure. Commissioner Gano?
Here.
Commissioner Bottenberg?
Here.
Commissioner Heilman?
Here.
Commissioner Burnett?
Here.
Commissioner Barnes? Here. Okay, and absent is Commissioner Chebian and Commissioner Martin. Contacted me. Okay, pledge of allegiance. Commissioner Gano, would you like to lead us?
Sure, I'll be glad to. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
Okay, next up is the approval of the agenda. Looks good to me. I'll move on to the agenda. Got a second?
I second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, our agenda is approved. Next up is the minutes of the October 11th meeting. Do I have a motion to approve minutes?
I make a motion to approve the minutes.
Thank you. Second. Thank you. Any discussion?
It's too easy.
Okay. All in favor of approving the minutes, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, minutes for October 11th are approved. Next up is public comments. Do you have anything for public comment? Let me just check there.
Doesn't appear that there's anybody in the attendees, but Rich.
Okay. Okay. So, on to new business. Next up is a discussion with the Recovery Beyond on fear-driven substance use recovery. Mark Perry, welcome. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you. Thank you.
You want to go ahead and just introduce yourself, tell us about yourself and your organization, and then we just usually have a casual conversation with the commissioners, asking questions. I think we all got the pre-read,
Great.
So hopefully we.
Yeah, I wasn't planning on presenting. I was hoping this would be more of a dialogue. I probably sent way too much information for you to review, but hopefully you got a chance to take a look at it. There is definitely a lot of information out there. I have been in the Washington State area since 1994. I moved here based on a job offer from Microsoft. So I've worked at Microsoft since 1994 until 2019. Prior to that, California, with a small time in Salt Lake City, Utah. Talked my wife into going and then got a job offer I couldn't refuse. We weren't there very long, although we loved it. But so when I retired, my kind of new purpose in life was to give back to the community. And I initially thought about people that were unsheltered, so homelessness. And going through that, I should also say, just as a disclaimer, I also wanted to learn more about public service because I was always in the private sector on the commercial side. And so in late 2019, I got involved with some shelters and some homeless activities for the state, as well as Recovery Beyond, which I'll talk more about. And I applied and was awarded a Parks and Recs commissioner for Sammamish, which I just ended that service. Last week was my last meeting. I learned a lot about public service. I love it. But I'd rather have somebody else do it. I'll take a little break for a while. But I think we accomplished a lot. And so now it's a great community. But one of the things I discovered personally, and it's probably because of 25 years at Microsoft in a leadership position, either being coached or coaching others on how to have impact. And I could not find my way in having impact for homelessness. I think there's a lot that people are doing. I think there's a lot I could do. But as far as housing, a lot going in that area. Food, a lot going in that area. Where I thought the opportunity was around mental awareness, mental illness, and specifically for those people that unfortunately have got into either alcohol or drugs or whatever it may be that makes up the substance use disorder category, which is very broadly defined. And I could have impact. And I could see that, how it's changing people's lives. And how a community that holds others within their community accountable is helping change their lives. And people that either once had or continue, but not to the level of activity and healthy lifestyle, we're getting back in doing things outdoors, getting back in doing things more adventurous, and just a lot more active. And it kind of brings together a passion that I have, which is being outdoors, being active, trying to be as healthy as possible, although my wife would say I'm probably a little bit overweight, but try to work on that. But the thing that I found, and I started with Recovery Beyond on the board, and at that time I volunteered to take a group for outings every Wednesday for bicycle riding. And we've had groups of 5, groups of 10, and when we meet, we talk about what we want to accomplish that day, because not everybody was at the same health level or stamina level. And some, unfortunately, we require people to be sober 90 days prior. We can check with their counselor, their treatment center, to validate that. But sometimes they wouldn't. And I learned so much about that community and what the strength of that community, holding them accountable. I didn't have to do anything. They did it all. And that was so fantastic. And then over the years to see them develop and be on the path to recovery, even though I have also learned from them that they don't usually use the word sobriety too much or recovery, because it's a lifetime journey. And I didn't know that going into this. So Recovery Beyond was established in actually 2008, formalized in 2011, and it started off with a person that had an aspiration to climb Mount Rainier with people that were in recovery or experiencing addiction. He was the executive director of the Seattle Union Gospel Union Mission. And it went over really well. But during that journey, what the learning is that doesn't scale. Not everybody wants to climb a mountain, especially Mount Rainier. You're not successful all the time, number one. It's pretty expensive. And so the organization became a non-for-profit 501c in 2016, with an ambition to broaden what we do as far as activities and get into hiking, which there's a lot of opportunities on the Highway 90 or 2 or just this area, and other activities to help people and be a little more achievable for people versus striving for this somebody out right here. And so the co-founders had a real aspiration to help people get on a path of recovery through a healthier lifestyle. That job one. What they found was it's the community that really mattered. People are already outdoors. They get drunk outdoors, they get stoned outdoors, but they don't have this community with them. And they could be this behavior in between treatments. They visit their counselor once a month, maybe once a week for some of them, but they can do a lot of things in 30 days or 28 days. So getting them into this community was extremely important. So going from a handful of people climbing a mountain to, in 2019, when I got involved, there was upwards of about 100, a little less than 100 people. And then, of course, unfortunately, March 2020 hit, and we went from effectively that number to 0. They couldn't connect with their counselors initially. A lot of people didn't have anything virtual online set up yet. That's the way we connect with them, or the referral system comes from treatment centers. And we couldn't put people in a van to take them up onto a trailhead for a hike, or whatever else. So we went to basically 100 to 0. And then we started realizing that there's a real opportunity because of this community thing to get people connected with this virtually. So we started shifting, as everybody else did, to a method to do that virtually. And then we started realizing that you can do things outdoors together. You may not be able to put everybody in a van and go, but you can meet. So we started rebuilding. And today we have about 350 participants. About 150 are active. You see them a lot. The others come and go. All of them, 100% of them are in a treatment center of some type, or have some sort of asserted or accredited counselor that they work with. Many of the people in our program now have evolved to be a coach for others, which has been fantastic to see that kind of evolution. But the U.S. has a crisis. 150,000 people died of a substance abuse last year. That will probably be significantly higher this year. 40 million people are in a treatment of some type. In Washington State, it's about 40,000 that are in a treatment center. And of course, King County being one of the largest counties has the majority of people. So as you can see, we're serving 300 people. There's a huge opportunity. And we really want to make sure that it can be affordable for these people. So our activities are free for them today. That may change. That's why we call them participants versus members or anything else, because they don't pay a subscription or a service fee or anything, or usage fee. We're not accredited, and we've done that by choice. We're not competing with a lot of the local treatment centers. A lot of our participants come word of mouth, although we did, over the last 2 years, have been successful getting some grants from the state and county. So we have now a pipeline, a feeder system by King County and by Pierce County for the correction facilities, so prisons, which has been great. Veterans is another area we're working on. And so that has been good. We have a staff of about 5 people, 4. We're hopefully backfilling 1 role. So we're budgeted for 5. We have a revenue stream or budget of about $700,000. Close to $800,000. The majority of that's grants. We have 2 or 3 large donors, handful of individual donors. Our founder is one of our largest individual donors, and continues to contribute and support the organization, although he did step aside in 2021, and that's when I became the president. We have a fully staffed or full board of 9 people, bylaws. The majority of our costs is staff. Majority. We do have a lot of equipment. We've been very fortunate to get to have some agreements with REI and other outdoor organizations or retail where they've gifted us a lot of gear. Gear is expensive, as you know. I can't believe raincoats. Some raincoats cost $500, and they gifted those to us. Like, yes. Snow climbing, very expensive equipment. So we've been very fortunate from that perspective. But we have aspirations to help more than 100 people, or more than 300 people. We have, it's just a matter of, can we provide them the level of service that they need and the attention that they need? And so a lot of people think that more money allows us to serve more people, and actually really doesn't. And our model is one that we train what we call peer leaders or peer coaches, and we get the community to help participate in helping the community improve or serve them. So a lot of our leaders on weekends, this past weekend, we had 40 people go snowshoeing So we had 3 peer leads that are all volunteer. They all have to be trained to keep our grants. We got to make sure that we know how to use first aid kit, but Narcan, whether needle or nose, we have to be trained to do that. Deflect any conflict that may happen. We've had a couple of incidents, unfortunately. A lot of our participants, not a lot, I should say, but some of them look like they've had a rough life. And sometimes, unfortunately, they get picked on. It's really sad, but they do. Even outdoors on a trail, somebody made a comment that sets them off. May need to work on behavioral issues, but we also need to make sure that we're aware of that. We can diffuse that when it happens. Let's see, what else? Any questions?
What do you, the average age is 41. What is the range?
Our youngest was 18
And
that participated in the program. Our oldest was 72.
And more women than men.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, it is interesting. It flipped. Prior to the pandemic, more men than women. The only thing we can think of is most of our staff were males, and now most of our staff are females, and maybe their communities, because all the staff, not the board. So just out of the 9 board members, 4 are in recovery. I am not. The staff, 100% are in recovery. So they have a network. And I don't want to stereotype guys and gals, but sometimes gals network better than guys.
Maybe guys like Mount Rainier and the left end.
Yeah, maybe. So anyway, we're finding a little bit of that, where most of that networking and word of mouth is coming from, like, bouldering. We weren't in bouldering or yoga, and now we're doing yoga sessions. The guy didn't bring that to us. We were fortunate that there was a community out there of females that are doing yoga, doing bouldering, doing boxing, and we have picked up those programs for that. So I think we'll see that start to shift a little bit. I do see sometimes when I'm on or involved with the people that come to us really, really have to want to improve their lives. And there's a little bit of another attribute of introvert versus extrovert. And I don't know if gender maybe makes a difference, but we're seeing that too. So how do we get people that are more introvert to come out? Because we don't require you to talk, but we do like to hear your stories, because that's important. So we are trying to look at that too, perspective.
You said community peers. Are they absolutely and all related to being substance abusers themselves?
Yeah, just my own personal story. When I went on these bike rides, the folks were great. We rode we did a couple rides, and we were riding with one person, and we went by, and he smelled something I did, and he said, "Mark, that's a trigger for me." And I'm like, "What?" Somebody is cooking something, math, whatever it may have been. And I'm like, "Oh, I don't actually know what that smells like. What's it smell like?" He goes, "Well, that's a trigger for me." I'm like, "What's a trigger?" He goes, "Well, I enjoyed it so much that if I smell it too often, it draws me back." And I'm like, "I wouldn't even have thought of that." So then I was like, confused. I'm like, "Really?" He goes, "Mark, have you ever been how to spend a night on the streets?" Nope. Ever used a needle? Nope. Not myself. I said I did something probably in college, but I don't think I necessarily had either the chemical imbalance or whatever that triggered anything. So it was really an eye-opener and education for me, and a realization that I have to have people in a substance use treatment or in recovery on these activities with me, because he was really good. If you haven't been where we've been, you won't understand what that's like and how hard it is to get out. And he's right. He was right.
What are you seeing as the main set addictions that your clients are seeing? Is it alcohol, coke, marijuana?
Yeah, it's shifting, unfortunately. But right now it's mainly alcohol, with opioids being kind of the second. Marijuana's in there, but it really leads to something else. Don't want to downplay it at all. Unfortunately, we're starting to see kind of a shift to fentanyl, which is terrible. It's terrible. And it is a drug like most others that the more often you take it, the more you need it. And if you're not careful, and it's so cheap on the streets, so cheap. I was shocked. I was just shocked. I had the opportunity with this person I went for a bike ride with. I said, I want to learn more about your background, the people with a similar background. What's the best thing I could do? And he said, well, come down to Seattle with me and we'll spend the day walking and talking to people. And I'm like, I can't do that. He goes, why not? I'm like, I'm afraid to do that. He goes, well, I'll be with you. Just don't go in their tent, or don't go out in the open and be with us, be with people. And I have the eye opener for me. They were buying pills, half the pills, 50 cents. Pure fentanyl or nearly pure, that they're cut it with something. But I was like, what? It doesn't take a whole lot to get $1 on the street. Yeah, so $1 would get you 2 halves. Anyway, it was eye opener for me. But we're starting to see a little bit of shift there, more and more. And we're actually not, because we had just another example of this, how pervasive it's becoming and how hard it is to break from it. We had an event, and it was a hard hike. If you've been to Mailbox Mountain off of 90, it's tough. It's really tough. Had a great hike with a group of people. Unfortunately, out of the 8, I think there was 18 or 20 of us, 3 chose to get together that evening after, nothing to do with our programs or activities, except for they were wearing some Recovery Beyond apparel. And 2 of the 3 passed away that evening because of fentanyl. They fell off the wagon. And of course, we were asked about it because they were with us all day. And it was just sad. They didn't know actually what they're taking, the amount, and what it would do. So it was just sad. So some of it's the naiveness too, and it's different forms that it shows up with. But we're primarily seeing opioids, some cocaine, meth. Yeah.
The fentanyl seems to be the upper.
Yeah. And the unfortunate thing, it seems like it's, at least what we're seeing in a small sample, is starting to take people out of recovery. It's so easy to get and it's such a quick high. And it's like, dang it, I don't need those things.
It's
so
cheap,
it's a bigger
cheap
issue.
and abundant.
It's a bigger issue.
There's a lot out
overseas. There's a
network. Yeah. So, but the majority of what we see is alcohol. And it's for us, what the other learning, because I think, Rita, when we were talking, it was like, I'm in non-for-profit space and I haven't heard of you. Getting the awareness. There's so many non-for-profits. And when I was in the homeless space, it was like, man, we just need a directory. So when you're driving, you see somebody on the streets and they're panhandling, they're doing whatever, you can say, oh, in this app, you just go here and here's a shelter. I want that for people that have an addiction. Oh, here's what you do. Because you can't come directly to us because we're not therapists. We complement that, we extend that, but we're not therapists. But there's of course Alcoholics Anonymous, which a lot of people know. And it's a great program for many, not for all, as many of these other programs are. But just getting the word out more and more and more of these type of programs. And we're not the only one. There are some huge nationwide ones. I'm talking to the founder, CEO, and chairman of the board of an organization called the Phoenix Group. It's nationwide. Unfortunately, they do not have a presence in Washington State. So I'm going to see if there's a possibility that we become a subgroup or we partner with them because they currently don't have a presence. They have a huge, huge budget, huge. They've been fortunate to get some pretty significant grants. The founder and CEO came out of the professional sports arena, so there's some money there. But anyway, it's a big organization. They serve, I think they served almost 4,000 people. Still not a lot if you think about the opportunity, but much bigger than we are. They have an app, so it's great. Not only to manage all their activities and people attending their activities, but if you want to connect with them, they're getting more. They're in the app store. They can help them with that. And a lot of things they can do from an awareness building standpoint, which we're working on. And so if I think about our biggest focus areas, it was rebuilding coming out of the pandemic, reestablishing ourselves, getting enough momentum, because as you probably all are aware, that you can't just go to the state of Washington and say, can I have a grant? Or a city, or even a county or a city? Can I have a grant? They're like, what do you do? Who do you serve? What's your impact? They want to see what's going on. So when we went from having some to zero, we didn't have a lot to demonstrate. Now that we have what I call this flywheel going, where we have programs, we have services, we have all these activities, we have participants, we can demonstrate progress, how each one of them is checking in to their treatment centers and how they've been on the road to recovery and sobriety for as long as they have been, and how we've helped that. I can start doing that, which is great. And hopefully that enables us to get some more grants, and hopefully that enables us to get some more individual donors, because then I can go to commercial partners, and I can start looking at commercial donors or sponsorships and stuff like that, and co-advertising. And of course, I don't want to abuse my relationship with Microsoft much, but it's a huge community. I'm on the alumni, so I use that 60,000 people in the alumni as much as I can, but I don't want to abuse that.
So you mentioned earlier that just throwing money at it isn't going to make it scale. And
it helps.
It helps, yeah. But what are some of the other things that would make it grow? Obviously, the Phoenix partnership or something like that. But what were you looking at prior to finding that? What are the things that would help? Because there seems to be a great need.
Yeah, it is.
Is it more volunteers?
If we choose to go down the path of accreditation and hire counselors, which is a long-term ambition, that's an expensive proposition. We're talking about people that their average wage is a lot higher than our current employees and salaries, double. So we want to be careful of that. And there's all kinds of certification requirements and a lot of stuff there. But so if we kind of map out where we want to be over the course of a few years, if we also don't want to compete with a lot of our current treatment centers and therapists. And so we got to be really careful about that line. But the more that we can get volunteers, it's a good thing. The more we can, we want to scale. I don't know if you had a chance, if you did have a chance to look at the document, one of the things I put in there is called this adventure map. And so that virtual area allows us to really connect with a lot more people. But the incentive there is, and it's a little bit of competition, which you got to be really careful with this community. But it gets you all the way to an annual adventure. And this year it's with an organization called Outward Bound. And they're picking up a lot of the costs, which is like, whew, what a gift. But that's expensive, and that's not directly, staff. But if we just get more and more organizations like an Outward Bound to sponsor, that would be so great. Because some of these people see this, and a lot of them it's fearful. It's like, I can't go Outward Bound as you go out by yourself at night with a flashlight and what do they call that? Scouts 9 Essentials. Anyway, you have a short list of things, and you got to get from where they dropped you off at back to camp. That's frightful for a lot of these people, but others see it as, oh, this is a real challenge, and I want to do this and exploration. So, but that, coordinate that, travel, all the things. We can do more and more of those type. Maybe not all the time, but if we can do more and more of those activities, hauling around kayaks, so we have to rent them, so there is a cost factor there. But if we could get, people to donate for rentals, 20 kayaks for an afternoon, that'd be great. So that's where I think we can scale. We don't have to build a huge budget, but we are thinking that optimally for the next 2 years, $1 million is a sweet spot for us. So we're close. The King County grant is annual renewal. Pierce is annual. Working on one state that is a 3-year.
And the problem with grants seems to be that you have to upfront the money used to be reimbursed.
Yeah, and it's quite a cost to administer.
Yeah.
So our director of development has moved on, so we're replacing that role, and so I'm helping. And part of that role is sitting in front of the grant managers once a month, and I was like, God, you're kidding me? They got their money. They agreed to it for the year. Why do we have to go every single? Anyway.
So, Mark, you had mentioned veterans.
Yeah.
And when I was on the King County Veterans Program and helped get the levy passed and everything, I like your program because we came to the determination when we dealt with veterans, I can get you recovery. I can get you housing, but I got to get you something to do because otherwise you fall right back into that rut again.
Yeah.
And by you having the challenge and the adventure out there, and still the camaraderie with each other, they have something to do.
Yeah.
And that was the problem. If you don't have something to do, I can put you in a house, but trust me, you're going to go right back to where you were because what else are you going to do besides get high or get drunk?
Yeah. And that's one of the things I thought was really brilliant of our current programs director, because in the past, the Pacific, you all know, the Pacific Northwest, you kind of move indoors for a lot of activities. Some of us tough it out, continue to hike and continue to do outdoor activities, but a lot of shift. And so we took the interest of many of our current participants, which was hiking, and said, or climbing. What about bouldering indoors? Oh, so we worked with the Seattle Bouldering. I don't know if you've heard of that. But anyway, there's a facility in Seattle that you can go climb a wall. Great. People want to do that. And it's indoors. And they give us a discount, participants a discount, which is fantastic. Boxing. Not everybody's into boxing, but we were able to do some of that too. And some people are enjoying that, which is great. So really looking at seasonal, how much we can get outdoors, what's the, snowshoeing. We were concerned. There is I should say, wages, number 1 cost. Insurance, number 2 cost. There is some liability insurance when you're doing this type of work. But we took 40 people up snowshoeing last Saturday. It was so cool. It's so fantastic. Big group to manage. And some were a lot quicker going through than others. So we have people front, back, middle. And so, but it was a fun day. But that's not for everyone. Some people are like, I gotta go. The snow is too cold. great. We have activities. So we're trying to do is how can we don't today, how can we have an activity a day? Beyond the virtual stuff. The virtual stuff is cool too. But how, and that was from a community connection standpoint, it's great. But how do we keep this activity going? Can we have something every day? So then it gets into, well, if we had a program staff person have to do that, that gets expensive. It's probably the same person couldn't do it every single day, may not have a skill or capability in those certain programs, but if we can get more and more of the volunteers to do it, and maybe we have part-time staff that's seasonal or some other mix, maybe we can do it that way.
And one thought is, have you looked at martial arts? I know up in Redmond, they have a nonprofit called Enso Center. And this is something you can do in, the dark season.
Yeah, we met with, I forget his name, but husband, wife, and Angel family. And we were doing yoga programs with them and then martial arts programs. Kind of fizzled out a little bit for COVID timeframe. We got to get connected back with them because it's, so I think, you asked me a question and I looked it up. The majority of our participants are King County based, even though kind of the roots is Pierce County. But we shifted and so we're applying a lot more of our attention in King County today. In the three, I think there's three, I hope I know Sammamish this well. Out of our area, we only serve 4 people currently in our programs. Issaquah is about a dozen, and a lot of them are Seattle based, Mercer Island, Everett, Tacoma, but that's not King County. We would like to serve, we have an office in Issaquah. We did not have an office for a long time. We decided that we were paying for storage in Bothell because it gave us a nonprofit discount. And every time we had an activity, people have to go up Bothell, So we got an office, it's on Gilman, it has a storage area, we can keep most of our equipment, not all, but and we can have people come there for community session, or counseling, or they can, local councils can, some of their local counselors can come there, meet them there in the evenings and stuff. It works out pretty well. So we want to continue to do more and more of that. But we have a presence here, but we're not serving a lot of people here. We want to serve more.
So do you run it?
So my ask of you, if anything you can do to help share the awareness of what we do, point people to our website, would be fantastic.
Well, do you have an AA program in the counseling side or Narcotics Anonymous?
We're connected to those. They're partners, the feeder system for us.
But they don't meet in your space at all? Okay.
That may be an opportunity we can look at.
Okay.
Yeah, and we, based on current restrictions, if there, and the other thing I've learned is really, a lot of our participants, I shouldn't say a lot, but a fair number of them have gotten reconnected with their family now that they're in recovery, and they would like to bring their family along with them on some of the activities that we do. We just can't do children under 18, just can't do minors. Maybe someday we can, but then that's a huge liability, and we just can't do it.
So maybe you look at
vehicles,
look at other events that you could take them to. Yeah. Group barbecues or just outings.
We have an annual event.
Outings with volleyball.
More than welcome to the annual event because we don't do any climbing or just.
Well, I found about your organization through my neighbor. They sent me a little note and asked me if I'd donate.
Yeah.
With a little business card in it for you guys.
Well, that's good.
That's word of mouth, one of the best ways to get things happening.
Yeah. Yeah, we have a stronger presence on LinkedIn, all the social. We're not on Twitter, but X. But Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn.
So I think we're close on time. Does anyone have a last question?
Hopefully this was useful.
Very helpful.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you
I
very
appreciate
much.
it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Feel free to take the main tent if you want.
Yes.
Yeah, I could probably use it.
Yeah.
Take some of those fat pills
take
with you, will
that.
you?
Yeah, I'll let you enjoy all those.
We also have openings on this commission too.
Don't you think I have not?
Yeah, since you got off of
I
the,
know you said, I know.
I'm taking a break.
since you got off the parks, I step down next month. This spot's open right here.
Yeah. And we have really good snacks. don't
Yes,
we?
we do.
Yeah.
Normally.
But I will let you know that the sad thing is our executive director is moving on. And I wish it was for better circumstances, but given her challenges in younger in life, she has some real health issues. So she has to focus on that. So I am dedicating most of my time on this organization. So I'm not going to give any time to the parks or to human services or just
Okay.
this.
Opportunity knocks.
Yeah. All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mark. Thank you.
Okay, so next we have a discussion with Communities Rise on building capacity building for Eastside nonprofits. And they're online, yes?
Yeah.
Okay.
Promote them, right?
Okay, we have Kyrie Smith, the Capacity Building Program Manager, and Brianna Jones, Co-Executive Director.
Hey, Brianna.
Hi, y'all. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, absolutely. And we're just waiting for Kyrie. Oh, look, there we go. Is that Kyrie coming up? Or
That should be.
okay, there he is. Hey, Kyrie.
Hey, Kyrie.
Oh, there, surprise Community Rise member.
Yay! Fantastic. Well, I'm going to pass it on to the chair now, Chair Vanes. Yeah.
Welcome, Kyrie and Brianna. Thank you for joining us. As you remember, this was the organization that Jody Nishioka, one of our former commissioners, led. Anyway, thank you for joining us. If you want to just go ahead and which one of you will start, just tell us about yourself and tell us about Communities Rise and what's going on.
Beautiful. Want me to kick us off, Bri?
Yeah, go for it.
Wonderful. So, hello, it's good to meet you all. If I speak at this volume, is everyone able to hear me?
We're good.
Perfect.
Wonderful, wonderful. So my name is Kyrie Smith. I'm the capacity building program manager at Communities Rise, and I do a lot of our overseeing of our programs around capacity building, including clinics and some of our like direct service work and like overseeing the facilitation of cohorts. And I'll pass it over to Bree.
Thank you, Kyrie. I'm Bree or Brianna. Both are fine. I use they, them pronouns, and I'm the one of the co-EDs specifically for capacity building at CR, and get to work with Annie and Andrew, who have stepped into executive director work after Jody has left the organization. Yeah, and also I just tried to share slides. Wanted to see if those are coming through okay on y'all's ends.
Yes,
Okay,
they are.
I see nots. Perfect. Thank you.
Beautiful.
Right.
All right. Well, if we got the visual and we got the audio check, we'll just keep on going.
Perfect.
So I'll chat a little bit about like what our mission is. So for Communities Rise, like on screen, what we have is like that we do a lot of fostering movements and building power within communities, mostly ones who are impacted by systematic oppression. But a lot of what that manifests as like can change from organization to organization. And even when we have our work with like different like other human services commissions and whatnot. But for example, we've had like some organizations where they just need like help getting a little bit of money, you know, which happens for a lot of organizations. But then other folks are like, we are unsure how to do management with our staff. We're unsure how to build a stable relationship with our board. We don't even know how to create partners, you know. So for a lot of those type of issues, like folks come to us and we get to work with them about learning like not just how to do these things, but how to do them in a way where they become sustainable on their own and are able to work collaboratively with these other folks to promote their own missions and support their community members that they're trying to support. But with that, I want to talk, speaking of community members, I want to talk a little bit about the folks we got on our team, because our team is a dream team. The only person on screen that is no longer part of the team is in the top left up here, and that's Zoe. So Zoe was the other capacity building program manager. She got a really good opportunity that came up a few months ago that she just had to transition for it. You know, we love her, we support her, we need her to get gone and do things that are good for her. But she was integral to our work on the East Side, and not only the formation of the East Side cohort, but also like the coaching and the management of the development for the organizations that came into our East Side cohort. So we wanted to make sure that we kept her on screen for whenever we're talking with our East Side cohort members, so they understand that like this lovely face right there was really helpful and integral to making sure good work was done. But one of the cool things about when we have this is this was taken completely impromptu, but it's actually pretty accurate to who is on our team, because this top row has everyone from our capacity building team. So folks who are doing the direct like consultation with nonprofits of like, oh, here's like this different area you're trying to work on, whether it's a strategic plan, whether it's like their staffing, whatever it is. These are the people on the top row that are working in that area. In our middle, we have a lot of our operations and development team. And these are our operations, our admin team. So these are a lot of our cool folks that are doing a lot of the back burner work that helps Communities Rise operate just in general. You know, without them, we have literally nothing, because they are the best. And on the bottom rows are our legal team. So these are all the like attorneys, consultants, and other folks are hosting programs around like legal competency and a lot of small clinics that I'll actually get into a little bit later in the presentation. But we wanted to make sure you just got a good gist of the dream team that helps put things together for us. I'll pass it over to Bree.
Perfect. Thank you, Kari. I appreciate getting to share the team up front. I feel like often when you get to meet an org, you only get to meet the two faces that get to come see it. And as lovely as our faces are, it's nice to be able to shout out the folks who really make sure this work happens in the day to day. So that's why we like to do a little bit of a comprehensive overview of our team. I'm going to shift us into chatting a little bit about the key pillars of our work. We like to think of it as 3 different pillars or sections of our work. The first one being our longer term relationship centered capacity building. This work is most often represented by our cohort programs or direct legal services, but this is the work we do with community organizations, whether they're a C3, a small business, fiscally sponsored, or whatever incorporation structure they have. This work we do in the long term. Our cohort program's 9 months, and we'll chat about that a little bit longer. Direct legal services are often on matters that last a couple of months, and we try and do intentional long-term building with folks, because we know that doing long-term support and relationship building with our organizations is what empowers our communities for the long term and make sure that the work they're doing is sustainable. And that being said, we also offer short-term offerings, because we know that sometimes when a grant opportunity comes up, when an emergency happens at the organization, or there's just things happening with a bit of a quicker turnaround, that we want to be able to be responsive to that too. And so we have short-term technical assistance or capacity building offerings that most often show up in our clinics and trainings. We have a fundraising and grant writing clinic and legal clinics, which we'll talk about later on. And then this third pillar of our work is long-term equity and systems change. So a core value of our work is knowing that part of our understanding of capacity building is supporting organizations in meeting the different barriers and challenges that they're up against. And another aspect of that is working with folks in different funding systems or other systems that our orgs are up against to advocate for change, for things to be more equitable, and to make sure that the systems are working as equitably as possible to empower the organizations we serve. And so part of how we do that is specifically with funders, through consulting with funders and providing feedback on RFP opportunities, which we'll again chat more about, and then capacity building coalitions. So we'll collaborate with different capacity building organizations, especially ones focused on and led by folks of color. As we are part of a group called Delta, which is a collective of capacity building organizations that gives us space to better understand what's happening in the sector, gives us space to better understand the different challenges the orgs we work with might be facing, and to better understand kind of the temperature of what's happening. in the work we do. And also, we have this slide because we recognize that sometimes capacity building is a really understandable or common term to folks, and sometimes it can be a little bit of inside baseball where people say capacity building and you're not quite sure what they mean. So for us here at CR, when we say capacity building, we're referring to any and all of the holistic work we do to support organizations, regardless of incorporation structure, in fulfilling their missions and supporting community. So all of the different large and small pieces of work that go into making sure orgs are able to serve their communities, do what their mission has planned, and to fulfill their programs and the support they offer to community. Is there's the work itself, and then there's the work you do to support the work, and that's what we like to support folks with. So that often looks like board development, community outreach, legal services, fundraising and grant writing support, advocacy support, various things. And the core values of how we approach this work is that it's really community driven. Communities Rise is a merged organization, and historically our work has come from different capacity builders and org leaders in community who saw a need for capacity building for and by folks of color. And so we see that legacy continues in our work by seeing the leaders we work with as experts in their experiences and communities. We also take an asset-based approach, so knowing that highlighting the strengths and the wisdom of our communities and the different, whether that be cultural insights or insight into their communities or their own experience with fundraising, grant writing, and other capacity building topics, bring that all front and center as part of what we uplift with our organizations and part of the ways that we're collaboratively doing capacity building together. And then, as you saw our team, they're lovely and they have a lot of content expertise themselves, but we also don't claim to be experts in everything. And so we celebrate the content expertise in our community by working with different partners, different folks with content expertise in different areas of capacity building to do culturally informed best practices for the organizations we work with. And I'll pose this question now for folks to ruminate on as we keep chatting, but I'm interested to hear what forms of capacity building folks may have seen prior to us chatting about it in this moment. So I'll ask a little bit about that at the end. We're gonna hop into chatting a little bit about what our capacity building looks like in practice instead of just the framework we approach it with. So starting with that, I want to shout out our capacity building cohorts. Our cohort program has been in existence for almost 2 decades at this point, starting with the Nonprofit Assistance Center side of the work, which is one of the organizations that merged to make Communities Rise. And it's a 9 to 10 month program focused on supporting 8 to 10 BIPOC-led orgs with individualized coaching, peer workshops, and then stipends. So in their time in the cohort, folks will work directly with a capacity building coach as well as with one another through our peer spaces and our workshops. And we also try and have like a community potluck and then a graduation and various spaces for folks to connect. They get to work on an assessment where they go through an overview of different aspects of capacity building that they may want to grow on or strengthen their work. So we'll ask them about how their board's doing, if they have a board structure. We'll ask them about how intentionally they're reaching out to community, what their support for staff looks like, and if their HR policies are up to date in the way they need them to be. And as we create this baseline of understanding of what their capacity building needs might be, we work on a work plan of 3 goals where organizations get to set 3 goals they want to accomplish in their 9 months of the cohorts, and then they're supported with monthly coaching and monthly workshop spaces from that point onward to get them to accomplish those goals, and also to get to know the folks they're in the cohort with a little bit better. Our cohorts, we have had a Seattle cohort the longest, but we just had our inaugural Eastside cohorts that wrapped up in August. And just to shout out some of the highlights from that, some of the cohort participants in that Eastside cohort, one org got their first office space, 3 different orgs did hiring ranging from 4 to 10 folks added to their team, while starting off with a team size of 5 or under, so significant adds to their staffing. And then 3 organizations got new grants, including 1 org who got their first multi-year grants. And so it is really exciting as folks who get to work with the cohort to see how they grow over our time together, how they support one another in growing, and help diffuse some of the competitiveness that can often be present amongst organizations, and continue to grow their org so that they can best meet the needs of their communities. I think I'll stop there. I could talk about the cohort for a while. I'll pass it back to Kyrie to chat a little bit about our clinics.
Wonderful. Thanks for the alley-oop. And as far as our clinics, you've heard it mentioned a few times before that we do have these clinics for different nonprofits. But I want to go a little bit more into depth to let you know, like, not just what our clinics do, but also like types of folks who are eligible for it. So on the capacity building side, we have two main clinics that we do. We have the fundraising clinic that happens quarterly, and this is going to be like about an hour and a half appointments that folks have with like professional like fundraisers, and they help with all sorts of things from like strategy to donor mapping, X, Y, and Z. But the team we have for the fundraising clinic, they differ in their areas of expertise. So we generally try and get folks whenever they're interested in any of our clinics, we have them submit what's called like a little organization profile. And that lets us know like who you are, what you're looking to learn, and how you're doing so far. And based on that, we do the matching from there. We find and we make sure we have a consultant that like meets that need, that's available for that clinic date that they're signing up for. And then we set them up for their clinic appointment. The fundraising clinic's like super fun. I'm actually going to be talking with all of our consultants on Friday, because right now we're offering it quarterly, but we're going to do a little bit of restructuring where hopefully, fingers crossed, we can actually start to offer them slightly more frequent, where instead of quarterly, potentially 3 times a semester. So we're aiming for 6 this upcoming year. But if we get it, more to be heard on that. But right now, that's the goal. But aside from that, much more frequent than the fundraising clinic, we have our grant writing clinic. And that's the one we do monthly. They're generally a little bit shorter appointments, but the different part is that they're usually one-on-one, except for one grant writing consultant. They like to take about 2 people at a time. But they're generally one-on-one appointments where they can do all sorts of things, from like reviewing your RFP, your proposal for your grant. They can do like some review on some application guideline. You could be someone who's never even done a grant before. You have no clue where to start. We got a person there for you. And she's awesome at what she does. But one of the things I think people don't realize that they can come to the grant writing clinic for is if you submitted for a grant and you didn't get it, and you wanted to get some feedback on like, what was up with my grant? Why didn't they like my proposal? You can also bring those, and the grant writing consultants will walk you through of like how to strengthen your approach either for the next cycle or even just in general when you're applying for future and other grants. So for both of these, the way that people can sign up for them, and they're open to like not just nonprofits, but grassroots organizations, some small businesses. The only folks who cannot attend the clinic are people who are like government employees that aren't teachers. It's just one of those lines where it gets a little bit of a conflict of interest, since we do a lot of work with these different groups, but just about everyone else can attend this clinic. So yeah. It's really easy. If anyone ever wants to join, they just got to email cbclinics@communitiesrise.org, and we'll set them up. We're done with clinics for 2023, but we're going to be back on and strong in January. So if you know any folks, please tell them to reach out to us, and we'll take care of them. But I'm going to pass it back to Bree to chat a little bit about what our RFP technical assistance looks like.
Perfect. Thank you, Kyrie. Yeah, I want to chat a little bit about this work we do. It kind of folds into these 2 different buckets. So RFP technical assistance work that we do is one part funder advocacy. So we get to work directly with different funders on helping them form an equity lens and a stronger equity lens into their funding work, whether that's reviewing their application, giving feedback on different ways they could make it more accessible to the communities they're trying to support, or collaborating on a equity training for the folks who are doing the review of the application, so like a raters panel or a applicant review panel. We collaborate with those folks as well to help them get a better sense of how they can strengthen the equity lens in their work and make it to where their RFP is both accessible to the folks who have the least access to funding and is also reaching the communities they're hoping to serve with the funding. So implicit bias and equity training for decision-making panels, and overall having a space for funders to collaborate with us and to get some insight into how we approach doing more equitable funding distribution to the orgs that we work with and orgs we haven't yet gotten to work with as well. So one part of it is collaborating with the funders. The second aspect of it is our grant writing technical assistance. So when we partner with a funder on a specific RFP or RFQ and taking on this equity lens for their RFP, then we will also provide one-on-one grant writing application support to folks who are applying to that grants. Typically, we restrict it to organizations that have a budget under 500,000, but that's very flexible depending on what the goals of the funder and the RFP are. And the application support that we offer with our grant writing consultants who support this process can be everything from walking someone through the RFP if it's their first time applying to maybe it's their first grant they're applying to, and giving them, having someone to walk through the application and better understand what's being asked of them. It can be reviewing drafts and giving feedback. It can be having someone to brainstorm through different questions. The only thing we can't do through this technical assistance is writing the application. This isn't grant writing on behalf of the organization, but can be consulting to support the organization in writing their response to the RFP. And I'll pass it back to Kyrie to talk about legal services.
Perfect. And Bree mentioned a few slides back that Communities Rise is a merger between two different organizations, and they mentioned the Nonprofit Assistance Center, the NAC. But the other organization that was used to merge Communities Rise, oh, look, with effects and everything.
Oh,
yeah, I like that. Was Wayfind. And that's like one of the big reasons that people initially had heard of Communities Rise was through Wayfind. And what they brought to the table was a lot of legal services and a lot of legal consulting, because on their group is a group of attorneys that coordinate direct services as well as like volunteer attorneys. So when we merged together and we made like, you know, our own program, because we shared an office for a long time. The way we explain it is like, we decided we liked each other. We already lived together and we decided, why don't we just get married? You know? So that's basically how Communities Rise came in. But where the legal services come in is that it's broken down now into roughly like 3 different areas. So there's the legal trainings, which are just all sorts of like, not quite technical assistance, but more so of like a small group, like skill building. And all of it is geared towards nonprofit stability. So one of the things that was in the last legal training that I was a part of, because occasionally I'll do some cross collaboration with the legal team, you know, just to make sure we don't silo too much. We got to keep the relationship strong, you know. One we did was actually on storytelling. So part of the capacity building side we brought to it was like how to like tell a good story and like when you're applying for like grants and whatnot. But a lot of the legal part that came into it was how to do like your adequate like reporting. How are you making sure that you're like managing different people's stories correctly? Like what are individual rights that folks have when you're actually getting their stories? So the legal training was actually like really, really good. We do a few of them every year, and we generally do them in response to like communal need that we've seen, or if we're collaborating with a government entity on like providing this services. But aside from that, we also have like our legal clinics. And these are one of the things that I think was like the flagship program of the legal team, where individual nonprofits, similar to grant writing clinic, but using a completely different email. They email in, they say, hey, I'm an organization, I'm looking for legal help on X, Y, and Z. They go through the process where they do submit their profile. Our really, really cool legal services clinic manager, Amira, she does the actual matching, similar how I would do. She finds a volunteer attorney who like either is an expert in that field or has some good knowledge on it, matches them together, and every month there's a clinic where there's a bunch of appointments between different volunteer attorneys and different nonprofits that need legal support. So the clinics for a legal team go on monthly, and those are one-on-one consultations because, you know, some legal matters can be kind of personal. And then there's like more extended legal services. This one is more on a pause for the moment because there's been some restructuring of how we're doing the legal services. But how it's usually manifest is like for the cohort members that become a part of Communities Rise for that 9-month stretch, almost every time people have like some legal area that can be worked on. Most times they just don't know it yet. But we usually find out like sometime towards the middle, and then they get this opportunity to not only get this consultation, but get some help like solving these different problems that come up. What I will say is like things come up from like even small as board bylaws and like doing like contracts, right? So it's a lot of things that can be swept under the rug for a lot of folks who are doing one person show for running their nonprofit, you know. What I will say, some things we absolutely don't do. We don't do any representation in the courtroom. Not doing it, can't do it. You know, there's too many different like stakeholders, and it's not always something that's good for us to do. Us not even just like with the time area, but like not something that we should be doing like long term in general. You know, these folks that are on attorneys on this staff, they're really, really awesome people. They're putting a lot of time in, but we can't have them put a lot of time into doing all this good work and then go represent like clients all the time. You know, let's be asking a lot of them. We love them, so we're not going to do that to them. But that's a little bit about how we do our legal services. If you ever have any questions about it, like outside this like small presentation, at the end, we have a list that has all the contacts for Communities Rise and who to reach out to for what. But I'm going to pass it back over to Bree.
Perfect. Oh, I skipped too far. There we go. You segued well into questions, and I'll pull this slide down a sec just so we can see folks better. But we wanted to open up space. One, we wanted to share this presentation with y'all for if you know folks who are running organizations who just need additional support with capacity building, please send them our way. We've been able to grow how we're showing up in East King County. Our roots are historically in South Seattle, and we've been able to do more work with East King County, I want to say starting in 2021. And so it's been great to start connecting with orgs, and we're hoping to continue to stay in support of the organizations we started to work with and more folks who are needing assistance out in East King County. And so if you know folks who need support, please send them our way. And if you're interested or have questions about any of the things we shared, we're happy to open it to that now. And I'll do a quick sneak peek of our contact info if folks want to write things down, and then I'll close the screen. But if folks have questions, feel free to shout.
Yeah, and I can also forward the presentation to the commission. So yeah, I'll make sure they get that.
Yeah. Oh, thank you.
Yeah, thank you both. That was a great presentation. Yeah. Very, very informative. Commissioners, questions? I had a question. I wanted to know more about the East Side cohort that you just started, and I want to hear a little bit more about that. I know you probably can't talk about individual groups, but like what was it like characterization? Is it youth organizations? Is it what, I guess, a general characterization? And then do you see a lot of need? Are you going to continue on?
Yeah. There's 3 nice questions in it, and I got 3 nice answers for you. One, what the composition is, there were no 2 programs who were extremely similar to each other in like their mission. So one thing that is pretty awesome about when we get the cohort is like we get a pretty nice variety of organizations that apply. So we very rarely even get like, 2 organizations that are the same anyway. So we don't even have to, they're not really in direct competition with each other, which is awesome. But that's a little bit about the composition. As far as the need that we saw, like for our Seattle cohorts, for example, that we've been doing for the past 10 plus years, one of the things that we've noticed is that because they're on, this side of the county, on this side of the water, they tend to have like a lot of support, like through their Seattle and through the county in general. So when they come to us, they're usually like grassroots orgs that maybe have had some experience writing some grants before. Maybe they've already gotten a little bit of funding. Maybe they even have like a little bit of staff members that they're able to operate with, where I would say that they're generally starting at like, if I put them on a scale of like 1 to 10 as far as like organizational stability and like current resources, they usually start somewhere between like a 4 and 6. One of the things I've noticed for like a lot of East Side folks that came over is that because they lacked like a lot of the support that folks get on this side of the county, on the west side, they generally came in around like roughly somewhere between like a 1 to 4, depending on the organization, as far as like resources available and how much of their organizational foundation had already been created. A lot of people who are like newer to the nonprofit game, a lot of folks who have been doing work for a long time without too much support. But because of that, what we did see was like there was a lot of need, and we did this first cohort in partnership with Bellevue, and we were able to affect like a lot of folks just on the East Side in general, just because sometimes people have offices, other places, people commute in X, Y, and Z. But we haven't been funded to do this cohort quite again just yet. And I'm not gonna get too far into that one because that one's gonna be Bree's realm, so I'm gonna bump it over to you. But yeah.
I was going to say one other thing I'll say about the composition of the group is uh, bear my memory because it's not the best. But two of the orgs that we worked with had a focus on offering health support or general social services support. We had two orgs who were more focused on supporting different organizations or like individual community members in getting connected to resources, and then had some folks who were focused on arts education as well, and getting connected to arts. So it was a real variety of the different services folks offered. And then one thing that we noticed while doing this East Side cohort is that we got a decent amount of interest when we were doing outreach to the East Side when we had the application window open for the cohorts, and were able to accept 8 organizations total, maybe 7 organizations total.
Yeah, ended up going with 7.
Right.
One they just weren't ready, and I was like, "Oh, we liked you, but let us know."
Yes. Kyrie will maybe roll his eyes at this, but I cornely always say it takes capacity to build capacity. So sometimes you have to have capacity to be able to be in the cohort work. But since doing the cohort, we've had different Eastside organizations reach out with additional interest, both in more short-term support offerings like our clinics, and then a vast majority of our cohort members were interested in an extended version or a second year of the cohort. And so while we don't have funding in this moment, we hope to bring the cohort back in some capacity through seeking funding or partnering with different organizations, and are thinking about what it could look like to do either an extended version or have some form of an alumni leg of the cohort so that orgs could return to continue doing capacity building with us. Nothing concrete, but just some ideas and hopes we have for the continuation of the work.
Thank you.
We talked a lot, so if there's any parts of the question we missed, let us know.
No, I think that was it. Thank you.
Couple of questions that you've touched on, but what is it that motivates those organizations? What is the felt need that causes them to come to you? And then since you have kind of a global view of our region, what are some of the trends that would be good for us to know as a funding organization of here's what's happening that maybe they won't tell us as individual organizations, but you could.
Yeah.
Do you want to start?
Yeah, I start for this one because I might forget the question, so I like to go first.
Yes, first one, felt need. Why do organizations come to you?
Mm-hmm. And so one of the big reasons that organizations like come to us is because at first, like the way we're conveyed to other folks is like, hey, we're gonna help you, build, stabilize, and grow your nonprofit, as well as like we got a bunch of like legal services, and everyone understands that like going into like the legal territory can be very scary if that's not your area of expertise, so they're always looking for people who are willing to approach that from like a very communal and like kind space, you know what I mean? Because no one wants to feel like they're going to get in trouble. You know what I mean? So a lot of what we do is we just let them know of like, hey, here's blank and blank that's happening. here's some potential consequences of going this way or that way. And we try to just make sure they're as informed as possible of their options, regardless if they're on the legal team or the capacity building team. But that's generally what makes people want to come to us, is that they know that we're always having like their best interest at heart, because our whole organization mission is like, how do we make sure that they can keep serving the organizations or the communities that they're serving, you know, and they value that. So they keep coming back for work, you know, and people even will sign up even for our clinics. They'll sign up like a few times, even folks who go through the cohort. We usually have like one space for the Seattle cohort, 1 or 2 spaces for people returning. And there's always at least twice the amount that try to return, just because like they know that there's always more work that can be done, but also they appreciate the spaces that we make for them. And they like, you know, not only meeting their other like people who are doing similar work, but they appreciate that they get to meet more folks who are giving them these services, what their best interests at heart.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And I'll let you hit the second one, Bree.
Perfect. I think the only thing I would add to it that feels worth naming, just because it feels tied to some of the needs that come up for folks, is that I think with our Eastside org specifically, we've had a lot of folks who have showed up who are, and Kyrie touched on this a little bit too, but like who have their org set up, may have their C3 status, and have been doing work for a while, but are looking to either grow, either to change incorporation status, are interested in growing and need funding specifically to support that. And so a lot of folks are coming to us with those like base needs, or that's their like ticket in the doors, like I need support with this. And then folks are able to stay on because we're like, oh, now that we know you need help with this, what else could we explore supporting you with? You might know how to grant write, but have you explored other ways of doing fundraising? And just being able to build from the first thing folks come to us with into a fuller rounded support for their organization. What I'll say to general trends we have seen on East King County since working with organizations, a lot of what we hear, one thing I think is specific to orgs we worked with in East King County compared to some of the orgs we worked with in our Seattle cohort, is that a lot more of the organizations are either board-led or founder-led. And so when it comes to increasing the capacity of those organizations, sometimes there is an interest in growing the staff or growing the team. And so some support in both the HR policies and practices that go into growing your team for an employer model, I think is something we've seen folks interested in. But there's also a lot of folks who really do the bulk of their work and want to continue doing the bulk of their work through volunteer support. And so getting comprehensive support to those organizations on how to create an engaging volunteer model that supports the volunteers as much as the volunteers support the orgs in a way that's realistic for the smaller amount of staff that are present, I think is really key. The other big thing I think comes up is that orgs are facing a lot of restrictions on funding. So whether that's either struggling to find appropriate funding for their work or getting a pool of funding, but struggling to meet the reporting requirements or the other aspects of the of receiving that funding, I think has been named as a challenge. We've had multiple orgs named that they've like found a funding opportunity that seems great for them, but they think that the reporting requirements or the amount of time that would go into both getting and maintaining that grant is actually doesn't meet the compensation that they're getting for the grant. And so folks are struggling with the level of restriction that's been present for funding, as well as trying to get a better sense of or better opportunities for what funding might be available. There seems to be some limits. Those two are the things that stick out. Yeah, no problem.
Thanks.
Did I miss it? Where do you get your funding from?
There's a couple of different sources. This East King County cohort we just did was funded by City of Bellevue. And then our other active cohort program is funded through City of Seattle Human Services Departments. And then a couple of other operational grants and things there as well.
Yeah. We have a pretty diverse pool, contracts as well, individual donors.
Yeah.
Yep. Any other questions? I'm having my educator scowl now from when I used to speak to see if I can peer into your eyes, but no.
Any other questions? No.
Great. Well, thank you for your time. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Great presentation. Thank you.
No, thanks for having us.
Thank you, Kyrie. Thank you, Bree. Have a lovely evening. Thank you.
Right.
Y'all
And if
too.
y'all need anything, feel free to reach out to us from the last sheet on the document that Rita's gonna send out to you. Have all our contacts.
Thank you. Absolutely. Thank you so much.
All
Thanks,
right.
y'all.
Have a good rest of the evening, y'all.
Take
You
care.
too.
Thank you for organizing those, Rita.
Yeah.
Great. Yes. Okay, next up is staff reports.
Okay, good evening, commissioners. Okay, this will be fairly brief because we've had Thanksgiving and all the rest of it. But okay, so just to let you know, I've met with two of the legal providers that we currently fund, Eastside Legal Assistance Program and King County Bar Association. We have funded them, but they have both found it hard to connect with residents in Sammamish. So I've spoken to them both independently, trying to connect them more with residents. And then I've connected them with other nonprofits, and we kind of brainstormed outreach activities that they can kind of do. I feel like with the next funding cycle, and this is another thing entirely, I think it's really worth us looking to see if we have funded an organization, have they been able to achieve their service units? Because I will say, and I'm very reluctant to offer my input as staff, but I will say if an organization sounds good and we keep on funding them, if they're not achieving their service units, then why are we funding them? Because ultimately, as a commission, you want to be able to give them the money. I don't want to be saving money, right? But anyway, that's another a conversation entirely, but we'll talk to that. I think I mentioned in the past, City of Bellevue currently does pooled contracts for us. And so of the 61 contracts we have, over half of them are part of the pooled contracts. The City of Bellevue, we were quite surprised, decided to withdraw from pooled contracts for the next funding cycle. And they won't be part of the pooled contracts either. So they're really going out on their own. So historically, City of Bellevue was at the mothership, I call them. You know, they've got lots of resources. You know, in a meeting like this, there'd be someone typing minutes. There'd be people that, like, you know, it's just it's a whole thing, right? But I think for whatever reason, they're wanting to branch out on their own when it comes to that. So they're not going to be doing the full contracts for the next funding cycle, and they also won't be a part of the full contracts. So that being said, which is a bit of a, you know, a stickle for us, right? Like, do I want to have 32 contracts back? And already, when I'm on 0.75, however, the City of Curtin is perhaps going to step up. Or we're looking at maybe cities taking ownership of a few, so we all have a few called, I don't know necessarily good call, but yes, but we'll see. So it's a little bit up in the air for the next funding cycle, but hopefully we'll get some clarity soon on that. Let's see what else.
Any comments? Well,
No.
Yeah.
Sorry?
Questions, but not comments.
Yeah, please, yeah, go ahead. Yes, this is informal.
What was the rationale that was given for that?
Very interesting. This is recorded. So,
You can be open.
I'm not quite sure. I think what happened was there's been a lot of staff turnover, and they have a lot of new staff, and I think they also say that they, so for instance, like we do monitoring visits once every 2 years with providers. Bellevue is now saying that whoever they fund, they will visit them. They'll do a monitoring visit every year, which is different from all of the other cities. I will say it's definitely caused providers to be put into a pickle, because providers love the idea of being part of the pooled contract, you know, and so yes, it's I think it caught everyone unawares, and And also it's kind of, I think it's also really sort of going forward when we think of the East Side. I think maybe building might be wanting to do their own thing more and more. And I think we've always done a lot. And Joyce, you would attest to this because you've been here with the task force before for many years. Like it was always like I think we've always prided ourselves on the East Side being a very strong kind of like cohort and very connected with my peers. Yeah, not to say that's not going to continue, but yes, it's interesting.
It almost seems like they want to just administer it themselves and
For themselves.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you know, they're the mothership, right? They've definitely got a lot of resource and they've definitely,
But it dumps a lot in the unknown, whether Kirkland or somebody else.
Yeah, and the other cities as well as the providers.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
They don't want to share anymore.
So yeah, so that's interesting, but you know, hopefully, like you know, Kirkland might like pull through, and if not, I'll just be doing like double the amount of contracts. Also,
That would be a horrible load.
Yeah, that's a lot.
We'll get on with it like we always do. You know, listen, we're small and mighty in Swabish.
Just more.
I mean, talk about the comparison.
I mean, I don't do caffeine. I'm a strict decaffeinator.
Oh,
I've not had caffeine in 22 years, and a couple of times a barista has done me bad, and my family are very scared for me to have caffeine. So yeah, so I'll report back on that. So, but like it's definitely it's definitely happening. Alliance of B-side agencies. I'm
sorry. Could I ask? Yeah, I'm so sorry. So
No.
kind of thinking through that, then kind of for doing evaluations next year and that sort of thing, how does that also affect volunteers? Do you see that being different? The pooling changes, like for doing evaluations of funding. Stuff.
As a commission, no, like you know that won't impact the commission because ultimately, like as a commissioners, you decide who you want to fund, and whether it's pooled or not doesn't impact your funding, like your recommendations, right? That's really for me to figure out.
That's the administrative side.
Thank you.
Going out and checking and making sure they're meeting their goals.
It's huge.
It's a lot of work.
Yeah.
Which
I mean, in consideration of
increases.
funding less number.
You want to be
more to.
And that's part of what I'm.
Is that what
Yeah, are there
right?
considerations that we should take
Should we
for the
back out
reality?
You sure you want to be
Thank you.
0.75?
Well, I think we need to make sure that with meetings, and Mike and I have discussed this, and again, it's kind of very interesting. Like, you know, I think as staff, like, I think we've always been very respectful of commissioners and your autonomy and your opinions. However, I think it's maybe worth considering, like, is there a minimum funding requirement? Because we've talked about it and we've all agreed about it in principle. But for instance, like Sound Generations, I think we're paying $367 a year or something. And so
Meals on Wheels.
right? Yeah. And so not that that's not a great program, but I would say that, so for instance, Bellevue won't fund anyone under the 10,000. I get it. They're doing astronomical, but as far as a funding thing of 4,000, I think Reddit. So again, that's just maybe something that, like, you know, as staff, we can kind of like maybe just like, okay, like, you know, there's lots of options here in the next funding cycle. What do you guys think? But again, also understanding that it's your autonomy and, you know,
Well,
but we want knowledgeable.
Okay, exactly.
And
I like this kind of information about not making your metrics.
Yeah.
Should we take that out of consideration?
And I think, just speaking to Mike, I feel like there are certain organizations that, you know, we are very different compared to other cities. We are and we aren't, right? And so what does that look like? You know, and so I think, so.
But yeah, sometimes it's not worth the amount of money that we give to a nonprofit for them to administer and track and report.
Yeah.
I think it's hard to
You know, when you get,
it's very hard. Do you go wide, you go deep, right? And then, you know, and again, you know, it's as a commission, and then do you fund new organizations who maybe don't have a fund track record, and what does that mean? And yeah, so I know that it's very loaded. There's a lot that goes into your decision making.
I won't be around next time, guys, but when they're not meeting their matrix, I would say you should look at them harder and say, you know, or maybe you do put a dollar threshold and say, here's where we start at. You know, we're not going to do a $1,000 grant to somebody or a $2,000 grant.
And I think like if the commission decide that, like, you know, we've still got a few months, but the when the applications come out, each city has a supplemental, so that would be worth, like, again, like, and then maybe that's something we discuss, like, you know, what do you guys want to add into that supplemental and what that looks like.
Numbers served has always been a frustration because there's the potential. If people knew more about it, there would be more numbers. Or in the case of homeless, it's like, we don't have any homeless, but there's a regional need to provide homeless.
But at what point do we do the regional for us when the bulk of the homeless is in a different area, and they should probably increase their funding versus us supporting it? That's a call, you know.
Yeah, I would say if you're homeless in Sammamish, you're not going to be staying in Sammamish because there's no resources. So you're really going, right? So,
you go where it's at. You go where the resources are, and we don't have resources for supporting homeless population.
Any of us. Yeah. So yeah, these are lots of like meaty kind of things that I think, you know, as a commission, you know, it's always like ticked along. And I think, you know, there are definitely some questions that maybe like, you know, or some thoughts, and I think so.
Yeah, and I think as the boundaries are appropriate, that there is also best practices, you know, nationally, best practices regionally that are part of not what we are going to be able to research, but to hear from staff. Here's what the trends are among municipalities and funders and that sort of thing that helps us. Again, I don't know that autonomy is a word that I would like to use, but we're more autonomous, where we act better the more knowledgeable we are.
Sure. Yeah. Informed.
Informed. Yes.
No, absolutely. Yeah. No. And I think we need to kind of look at that as to what staff input is, because I think before I've always like kind of been there and answered questions and gone back and been a go-between and kind of been candid. But yes, so that's definitely something we should explore. What else? Alliance of Eastside Agencies. I'm an ex officio member there. They've got their annual awards luncheon at the Together Centre on January the 18th at noon. And
what's the organization?
Alliance of Eastside Agencies. Yeah.
We've been there before.
We have had them come and present. If you remember, it was Helen Banks Region from Kids Vantage, Rochelle from the campus, and Helen from. So they came and talked about, they're like an organization that advocates for smaller organizations, and So
is Habitat for Humanity tied with them?
I don't believe so. No, it's definitely more of an Eastside based kind
of.
What else? A volunteer appreciation event. I think I forwarded you the email. Beaver Lake Lodge, Saturday, January the 27th from 10:30 to 1:30. There's going to be awards, games, refreshments, and a recipe in a jar.
Just as long as I don't do pickles.
We're going to make olives.
Recipe in a jar. Come on, like, you know. So please RSVP to that.
I did.
Anybody else?
I think I did.
Let me see. The Eastside Human Services Forum that we're a part of is looking for a new executive director. I participated in the interviews of the final 2 candidates. So we'll see what they come up with there. And then the Human Service Commissioner applications are open for positions 1 and 2. As of now, Commissioner Heilman and Commissioner Gunno are not going to be renewing, but that does not have to be set in stone. Applications must be submitted by 5 p.m. on Friday, January. I think Friday the 5th January. And on January the 9th, council will be reviewing applications and voting. So please spread the word. And then next month, we're going to be having potentially the last meeting of Commissioner Hyman and Commissioner Gunno. And you have to attend because Mike will be here and he will be making coffee. Because, you know, he's got the touch, right? He's got the secret touch. So please attend that. Any other questions?
Okay, thank you.
Great.
Next is commissioner reports. Commissioners?
This qualifies as a report, but I would say, as I let Rita and Mike know, stepping off after my 2-year term, very regretfully, I have to say, but just finding that having a more than full-time job, my team doesn't necessarily come with a whole room of folks. I frequently am that room.
Yeah.
So, you know, having a very full-time job, having a child that lives in France, I just want to serve well. But I will say, and I mean this genuinely, if there is someone that you need, we need a volunteer to do something or support or whatever, I'd be flattered and very glad to help on an ad hoc basis whenever helpful. But just please know, really have valued the relationships and opportunities of what we get to do. I'm stepping off only regretfully. So,
Same. Well, thank you.
it's been a real joy.
And we'll have your last, like, because, you know, next month, it'll be like the Stan show and Stan and Mark show.
It'll be singing and dancing.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, I'll bring in a band.
Yay.
No, maybe a DJ.
Okay, there we go.
We're not that autonomous.
Commissioner Budberg, I saw the tree lot looks like it's way down.
It was down to 40. And it's like, okay, it runs out this weekend.
Yeah.
Do we run out before?
Yeah.
Do we order more and then get stuck with them? What do we do?
How many did you have?
Oh, 400, which is considerably more than last year.
Really?
And additionally that we had 30 trees sponsored to support clientele at the food bank. And come on, guys, come and get them before the trees are all gone.
Yeah.
Because they had to be chosen by lottery by food bank, physical food bank. And it's like, come on, hurry up. Any tree on the lot. You know, it's not like you have to just stick with Douglas fir. You can, anything, take whatever height, whatever you want. I haven't had a tree since childhood. This is the first tree I've had in 5 years.
Wow.
A group of 7 came in yesterday, and it was just amazing. It was 3 little kids and the parents and the grandparents to choose the tree that they have not had in their family and ever for these kids.
Wow.
Come on. It's like wonderful.
Yeah.
It is
But
so
there's another
cool.
15 that were waiting to come in. And we're down. I don't know what the count is today because I preferred not to work to come in here today, but I'm on duty for tomorrow, Friday and Saturday. It's like, oh, the stories.
Oh, that's beautiful. That's
Very
wonderful.
hard.
That's nice.
Yes,
Yes,
thank you for
very
mentioning the rotary trees.
Yes.
And you have yours up and
Yeah,
decorated.
it's a lovely tree. So good.
Good.
Yeah.
Mm.
So nice. Look at you, too.
And I would say the
I
lodge
know.
is going very well with senior programming. It's, it was nice and warm there today. We had some trouble in the summertime when it was so warm.
Yeah, it wasn't
Which is
very
nice.
cool in the summertime.
And people are interacting pretty well. Because when Tai Chi, you're the sister part and you're not. But when it comes to the art projects and the origami that they had today, or they have a speaker, they had a mental health one last week. It's really very nice.
Good.
Good. I'm
Good
glad it's
opportunity
working.
for people to get together.
Hey, anything else? Any other reports? Okay. Our next meeting
is going to be January the second Wednesday, and January the 10th. We do not have an agenda for that right now. I think it should be a bit more of a celebratory kind of thing, because I had that Redmond, they took their commission out for happy hour.
What?
I know. I'm like, what? And I was like, is that possible? And apparently you can do it as long as you don't talk about city business.
Okay.
I'm just saying.
I thought that,
so,
4 or more are gathered together, you're stuck.
I know. So is this,
You can do a notice.
You could do it, but apparently Redmond didn't notice because they took their commission out, but they said they weren't going to talk anything about commission.
You could risk that.
Oh no, we're risking this. Oh, okay. Then
you can. We can do it.
But if we said we're not going to talk about anything commission related, are we able to do that, or would we still have to notice that?
If you're sure that you won't.
That's impossible.
They can't stop you from associating with each other.
If somebody sees you all together and assumes that you're there as a meeting.
Yeah, exactly. They're
retiring. They've got a secret human services.
You're just trying to get out of taking us to happy hour.
No, listen.
Can we have this room again? Like the old days?
Yeah.
No, this is a one-off. This is because you 4 double booked and it was like 30 kids
scheduled for every.
No, this is not every second Wednesday, I think, because
they always get off.
Yeah, because they've got schools out next week or whatever. So we're back to the dice and
Gone.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm thinking something fun, but I've got to run this by Mike. And guess where Mike is?
Somewhere warm.
We're not gonna Tahiti. And like
Where did he go?
Tahiti.
What does he go from?
I know.
Yes.
For 2 weeks.
Yes.
There you go.
Bora Bora, and then a couple of other, and I am like, oh my gosh. And we will never, like, I'm personally very disappointed that he's not here.
They must be serious.
Because you know what? Can we stop recording? Oh,
yeah, I was going to say, we haven't adjourned yet.
I'm doing it.
Yes, because he's going to hear all this.
Okay, exactly.
So, okay, so you're working on the agenda for.
Sorry, Mike.
Yes, okay, yes,
I will be back in touch with that.
Yes.
We
Okay.
can digitally.
I don't know what to force you to commit.
I know some people who know some people.
Are we ready to?
Yes.
adjourn?
Do I have a motion for adjournment?
I will.
Second.